Howdy, my name is Salas, and I will be presenting on the strategic analysis of the Boeing Company. So today I'll be going over the three major sections of a strategic analysis: the external, internal, and then recommendations on both the external and internal analysis. So company history. Boeing was started by William E. Boeing, who was a timber merchant, and he founded the Aero Products Company in 1916. It kind of just came, he was really into planes, and he decided that he wanted to start his own company and start making planes. So the first plane was the B&W, which was a single engine two-seater, and then in 1917 it renamed the Boeing Airplane Company. So in World War I, they built flying boats for the Navy and trained flight instructors just because it was the war and there was a lot going on, so they helped out the military in that. They also sold airplanes to Hubbard Air Transport, which was the first airline in the world, and made the first mail route on air flight. So that was pretty neat. It was the first one in the U.S. So in World War II, they built the B-17 Flying Fortress for the Army, and they upped their production to they were making 16 planes every 24 hours, which was pretty unheard of at the time. And then towards the end of the war, they started doing the B-29 Super Fortress, which was known for dropping the atomic bombs on Japan. They also do a lot of NASA contracts, and we'll learn a little bit later about that in the presentation. So the background, their corporate office are in Chicago, Illinois, and they aspire to be the best in aerospace and enduring global industrial champion. And it is the largest manufacturing exporter in over 150 countries. So the external analysis will go over general environment, industry, the 5 forces analysis, the driving forces analysis, competition, and the external recommendations. And each one of those segments have a list of things along with that. So the general environmental analysis starts with the demographic segment. There's 2 major segments that the industry has, and that's the commercial and government. Under the government, it'll be defense, space, and security, so military contracts, anything to deal with aerospace, NASA, and security on aircraft and other things. And then commercial would be your jetliners, your commercial airline planes, and any air or freight travel. So the economics segment, in the recessions, it's pretty interesting because if the company has more commercial products than government, they're more at risk during a recession, just because in a recession a lot of consumers are budgeting and they don't want to fly, or they don't want to travel, or they don't have the money to, and so it brings down the market on that. But if they have more government products than commercial, like Lockheed Martin or any of its other competitors, then they'll have a steady flow of constant demand with the government contracts dealing with military, space, and security. And they'll most likely strive through recession and surpass its competitors through that point. For Boeing, if they had government contracts and commercial contracts, it may balance out, but because they're more on the commercial side and they have the largest fleet in the world, it may still be profitable, but it'll still take a hit, just not as big as of a hit as its competitors. So the political and legal, there's always legal barriers when it comes to government work and just air flight in general. So you need to be aware of countries' laws when you're going into a country and expanding your work, especially when it comes to air travel. When you go to country A to country B, there may be different regulations or different laws that not only you as a producer or a manufacturer, but your consumers, your passengers on flights, and things like that. This took a really big hit during 9/11, just because a jetliner did get so because a commercial airliner got hijacked, it put a lot of pressure on the United States military and just the government itself on increasing securities, so it would never happen again. So the Aviation and Transportation Security Act came about after 9/11, and this is where the TSA was born. And so we all know now that when you go into an airport, the TSA is everywhere, and they'll check your bag, they'll check your person, just to make sure you don't have anything that could harm other people or is potentially illegal, bombs and such, on an airplane. Now, this also includes security with government and military projects. So everybody's gonna, if you're on the design team or are dealing with security, you're gonna have to have a government clearance. And it is very, very crucial that you hire people that are trustworthy, because if leaked, they can be charged in prison for treason because they're leaking government secrets. So the socio-cultural segment is just be aware of the cultures around the world. Make sure you know the business etiquette when going to a different country. Like, for example, when you're in Japan, you need to bow instead of a handshake. Or sometimes in the Middle East, you need to make sure that you talk with respect to another person without offending them, just because of the cultural differences. And not only outside the workplace, but inside the workplace too. There's always various ages and people that are different learning and do thinking styles. So you always want to make sure that you have a grasp and think about other people and how they will react to certain situations. So the technological segment, Boeing is one of the most technologically advanced companies within the aeronautic industry, and it brings mission to life, but connect, protect, explore, and inspire the world through aerospace innovation. So, of course, with the military or government contracts, there's always innovation for technology, because you always want to be ahead of the person, your competitors and other countries, because you always want to stay ahead of the risk and ahead of the threats. And same with the commercial side, you always want to continue to improve your your aircrafts to fit the society of today. So the global segment, in the commercial industry, it's most diverse on globalization. Planes are getting larger and more efficient and longer travel, so they're going from country to country, so you're going to be dealing with a lot of different people around the world. So that's literally globalization at its core. On the military and space industry, it's always changing, so the companies need to stay competitive with other countries, which goes on a global segment, especially with other people's militaries, and if we are going to war, what our competitors and enemies have, and then make it better. So the industry analysis is going to be like the description of the industry. The industry is very large. It includes fixed-wing aircraft, combat and commercial, rotary wing aircraft, helicopters, space shuttles, and satellites. So different things like that, and software for security is all under this industry. So it is very large and very diverse, and this is why it's broken down into usually government and commercial work. So the industry dominant economic features are going to include meeting the demand of travel. Travel is huge nowadays. Being on an airplane is a lot safer than being in a car on a road for hours, and it's a little easier. Plus, a lot of times in the international business segment, there's always going to be a need for travel to different countries to work with meetings and different things like that. So these are their key economic features that push them to keep growing and to keep the innovation current. So the market size, in the global market, there's about 2,000 airlines operating around 23,000 aircraft and service about 3,700 airports. Within the U.S. market in 2016, there was 42,700 average daily flights in the United States, going from state to state and into Hawaii and Alaska. And then 2,587,000 people in and out of U.S. airports every day. So if you think about the numbers, every day, that many people, that's a lot of economic development. There's a lot of market share through that. And Boeing itself has 3,076 commercial aircraft in their fleet, which is made up about the 43.17 of the entire U.S. fleet. And that is about 7,126 total aircraft in the U.S. alone. So thinking of Boeing and within the U.S., think about what it's going to be like on a global scale. So the market growth rate on the commercial industry, it's going to be lower commodity prices will result in growth, like low cost of crude oil, or the high passenger demand in the Middle East and Asia and Pacific regions will push the market and grow to a higher demand. With the government industry, unfortunately, those growths will be more if we have a war, because of the growth of the defense and more aircraft and security and maintenance, and the space race. So right now, there's several countries that are trying to get to Mars, and that's kind of pushing the U.S. side in the space industry, along with Boeing and Lockheed Martin and several others do a lot of work with NASA on the International Space Station, so they always have to maintain their products and with annual maintenance and things like that. So the industry trends are very unpredictable in defense and space because on the government side, it thrives on innovation. If you don't have innovation, you are going to become obsolete. So there's always new technology, there's always new designs, and once the new technology is created, then those products are obsolete, so you always have to keep changing. So it's very unpredictable because you don't know what your competitors are going to be working on or what the next new thing is. You just have to keep ahead of the curve. It is predictable in the commercial industry, though, because the aircrafts are getting larger and the prices are going to drop, which are just more people to travel and go explore the world. So that economy drives the industry. It's really neat because on the commercial industry, it's very unique to what the customer wants. So if a certain airline wants a different design in their plane, then the Boeing will meet them on that. So that'll make their company more luxurious or more marketable to a person, especially when traveling overseas and you have a long flight. So the 5 forces analysis is the threat of new entries, the power supplier, the threat of substitution, the buyer power, and competitive rivalry. And we'll go over into each one of those and see how the aeronautical industry fits these. So the threat of new entrants, it is difficult for the new entrants in this industry because companies are established for decades and they already have that market share, and you have to have a lot of money in order to enter and in order to be competitive, it's just not going to happen. So it is very difficult for new entrants. The idea and technology needs to be groundbreaking. So for example, SpaceX is up and coming, and they have just flourished with their technology and their ideas, and so Elon Musk has a lot of money, and so it was a lot easier for him to enter that market. But on the commercial side, with the manufacturing, there's only one real competitor, and that's Airbus. And most of the companies in the defense side already collaborate with one another, so it's going to be really hard to enter into that market. The power of suppliers is pretty much non-existent, just because most companies do their own work, so they design, manufacture, and deliver all of their own products. So it doesn't really help, and it helps the company just because there's not a lot of competition on the power suppliers. Now, the power of buyers is what drives the market. So in the commercial industry, the airlines have their aircraft meet their needs. For example, Emirates is coming up with these nice, luxurious seats, and they have their own rooms, and then they have bathrooms, and it's really luxurious to meet people's needs or people's wants or people's luxuries. That way, they do have the inclination to fly with that company. And so Boeing does that. They cater to each company's needs and wants, and they remodel their aircraft as such. Now with the government, without the government, there would be no contracts. So the power of buyers is heavy on the government side, just because if there was no NASA contracts, if there was no military contracts, and the military did it by themselves, then most of the aeronautical companies would go out of business. Now, in the power of substitutes, there's not really substitutes for the government side, just because of the constant innovation, and different people create different things for that government side. Like, for example, Boeing does a collaboration with Lockheed Martin, where Lockheed Martin does the systems on an aircraft, while Boeing makes the outside of the aircraft and designs it. Now, on the commercial side, there's definitely some substitutes. Well, of course, you have your car. If it's not too far away, I mean, if you don't mind driving for hours, going to point A to point B, and it may be cheaper for gas. And then you have ship, also with shipping in general and trade. A lot of people don't want to use freight liners because of just the cost, and it's very costly, so it's easier to ship it on a ship than to bring it in on a plane. And you have rails, so if you have large amounts of coal or oil or anything like that, it's going to go on a train or ship. So those are the substitutes for the commercial side. And for travel, though, it'd be like car or ship, whether it be ferry or cruise ships if you want to go luxury, and different things like that. Now, the intensity of rivalry. So it's intense part of the time when you're competing for contracts, but a lot of the times you work together for a common goal. Like I said, Lockheed Martin and Boeing, you have a collaboration on some of the space and military contracts, like the Apache's helicopter. So the driving forces analysis on the aeronautics industry, there are 5. Globalization, just because it is on a global scale, you're always going to travel from point A to point B, and you're going to be all over the world. Technology is always changing, so that's always a key factor. because of the innovation and constant changing of technology with the current times and wanting to strive to get above your competitors. Adaptability, you never know what's going to happen. There can be plane crashes, engines exploding, natural disasters, or war for the government side. So you always have to adapt to your surroundings and be calm and make your products to where they're going to withstand those types of things. Service, you're always want to be a good customer service. You're always going to want to please your customers, and you're always going to want to make sure that your company has a good reputation for their service and keep the service. Like, for example, maintenance on aircraft or things at the International Space Station, or security. And government policy. So you always have to maintain awareness of what country you're in, their government, their laws, and what you're able to do in those countries, especially within the United States. You don't want to leak government secrets or do anything illegal with your products. So you always want to make sure that you're within the law and of the country that you're in. So the competition analysis, the industry competitors, the major competitors are going to be Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman Corporation, SpaceX, and for the commercial side, Airbus. Even though they are competitors, they do a lot of collaborations together, so it goes hand in hand. I don't really see them as competitors, just more like partners wanting different things. So the rivals anticipated strategic moves. So for the defense and space, they all have the same goal. Either get to space, provide government with the most products, and innovation. They always want to keep innovating, like I said, and they just want to stay ahead of everybody else. On the commercial side, Airbus is making more planes and successfully delivering them. Because of the demand of jetliners, there is a long waiting list, and people are bypassing the waiting list and going to Airbus instead. So key success factors is going to be strategic focus. You always want to make focus on your strategic goals and keep an eye on the prize, basically. The people, you want to treat your people right, and your personality with other people to maintain good business relationships. Operations, you want to make sure you're on deadline. You take your time and making sure that you are doing all the right steps to keep people safe, because people are going to be on these products, so whether it be military or just regular civilians on a plane. And then you want to market that. You want to be marketable, and you want to make sure that your finances are good to make sure that you can pay for new innovation and new products and things like that. So my external recommendation is always innovate technology. You always want to be ahead. You always want to innovate. You always want to create something new. And look for alternative ways to get to space. There's a lot of scientists and a lot of studies going on right now, and for the aeronautical industry, I think it'd be really cool to look at different ways on how to get to space, and look at for environmental efficient ways to operate aircraft. Are there is there a way to create less emissions with aircraft, or different things like that? Or what do we do with the spare parts? Or are we going to recycle them, or what? So these things are my external recommendations to the industry. Now for the internal analysis, we're going to go over organizational analysis, the analysis of firm resources, the financial, and the SWOT analysis. So the corporate mission for Boeing is connect, protect, explore, and inspire the world through aerospace innovation. And they strive for this every day. They make sure they're keeping people safe with their products and things like that. So their products and services are commercial airplanes, and then on the government side, defense, space, and security, and then they also do global services, which would be your maintenance, your training pilots on how to fly certain aircraft, if things are changing on a new model, the education on things and the maintenance on those things. So that would be your global services. And then, of course, the government defense would be all your military aircraft. Space would be anything dealt with NASA. And security would be just the security of like the nation and cybersecurity and things like that. So the organizational analysis leadership team of the company. So Dennis Muhlenberg is the president and CEO of Boeing, and this is kind of their structure. So it'd be CEO, and there's like a vice president of manufacturing, purchasing, marketing, finance, and human resources, and then it goes down from there. So it's a little flow chart. So the organizational culture, they have 7 core values. It's integrity, quality, safety, diversity and inclusion, trust and respect, corporate citizenship, and stakeholder success. So they always want to maintain integrity on everything they do, the highest quality for the lowest cost on their products, and safety is a big thing, and we'll talk about a little bit about how they're improving their safety standards a little later, but not only with its employees, but making its products safe for commercial or for just the use of the aircraft. Diversity and inclusion, they want to make sure that their employees are diverse and not only thinking the same way, and they include one another, because that's how a company relationship works. They want to make it a home instead of a workplace. Trust and respect is a given. It's like the golden rule: treat others how you want them to be treated. You want to be treated. And corporate citizenship, making sure that the lower employees can make sure that they're valued and show that they are a part of a bigger picture. And the stakeholder success, well, you always want to keep your stakeholders happy and make sure that their involvement keeps growing, especially on their investments and things like that. So the company strategy. A few years ago, they had the One Boeing plan, which is they wanted to change the manufacturing strategy for the KC-46A tanker. The manufacturer on the commercial side, and the defense could work on more specific parts of the aircraft, like security or things like that. So they, instead of having the defense manufacture the outside and the body, they just brought it to the commercial side to help with that. And it helped. It helped offset the effects of declining or flattening of U.S. budgets. And then they did want to integrate parts of the supply chain. So they bundled low volume defense and space purchases with high volume commercial orders. If there was certain parts that were going to be used on multiple things and they were the same, why not order them in bulk, then distribute them to the defense and space side instead of ordering them separately, and it's more work and it takes longer. So this is like hitting 2 birds with 1 stone, and so that actually worked, and they're integrating more and more of these things across their company. So tangible resources, the company property is that has physical existence. So this is your hard currency, equipment, and real estate. Now in 2017, that was at $12,672 million, which is huge. So they wanted to make sure they had a lot of assets, and they do. So the intangible is stuff that's not physical in nature. So corporate intellectual property, patents, trademark, and business methodology. So you don't want your ideas to be stolen by a competitor or another country. So those things are your intangible resources. So in 2017, they had 2,445 million in distribution rights, 650 million in customer base, 556 million in developed technology, and the net acquired finite lived tangible assets ended up being over $283 million. So it's a lot. They make sure that they get the credit that they deserve on their products. Their capabilities is going to be talent, speed. You always want to make sure that they make sure that they manufacture and design aircraft on time and efficiently, because you never know when the military is going to need them or someone's going to need a new aircraft. The mindset and brand identity. There's a lot of people that know the Boeing name. They know who they are. They know what they do. And that's part of the brand identity. You always want to put the name to a face, which would be a plane, or at NASA they're doing the entry pod for Orion, and collaboration. So collaboration's a huge part in Boeing's strategy, just because that's how they do a lot of their business. It is with collaboration of other people like Lockheed Martin and the other competitors that we talked about in the external analysis. So core competencies and sustainable advantages. One of the old Boeing CEOs talked about market shaping, and I thought this was really interesting. So they want detailed customer knowledge and focus. They want to ask, where is your customer going? So when you're trying to design an aircraft or design a product, where is my customer going? What are they going to be looking for in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? And how can we get that? So it can't really be predicted. You can only really use your imagination and see where the times are going with innovation and technology, and go from there. So the valuation analysis, Boeing had a huge price-earning ratio, price-book ratio, price sales, and cash flow ratio. So the BA is Boeing, and then the others is just the standard for the industry. So for price earnings, on the far right, the second to the last would be 2017, and so they had a ratio of 27.2 when the average was 22.9, and on sales they had a 2.0 when the average was about 2.2. So the growth analysis, Boeing has been growing significantly over the past 10 years. Their revenue has skyrocketed in 2017. The 10-year average was 3.47. Operating income was on a 10-year average is 5.74. So it has grown quite a bit. There has been some bumps in the road with the economy going down in 2008. But other than that, it's been steadily growing and such. Profitability, there's actually a lot of profitability within Boeing. Their return on equity is huge, about 136.80%, and the return on invested capital is about 38.52. So it is profitable. It also depends on the economy at the time and their contracts at the time and their stakeholders. So financial strength. This breaks it down from company, industry, and the sector that they're in. So usually, most of the time, Boeing is way ahead of the industry. On the quick ratio, though, they're about the same, but they blow everybody else out of the water with working capital, debt to equity, and leverage. So the SWOT analysis. So Boeing's internal strengths are the global network and international presence. They have a lot of presence in the world, and internationally. So you see their products all the time. Anytime you see a Southwest Airlines plane, it's a Boeing. Anytime you see different military aircraft and helicopters, those are Boeings. There's also strong international ties with different countries because of how durable and how reliable Boeing's products are. Other countries want those too. And that's not just the commercial side, that's also including defense and security side as well. There's also a variety of jetliners catering to a large, diverse market. So most of the large jetliners do come from Boeing, and when you travel, you're traveling on Boeing. So those are their major strengths, along with military and space innovation with their collaborations. They do very well on military and space. Now their weaknesses, with the past few years, actually in the past few months, the Apache manufacturing quality, the U.S. Army has come and said they will not take any more Boeing Apache helicopters because of a certain bolt or a certain nut that keeps the rotors in place, and it keeps corroding in combat areas and coastal regions, and so they deemed it unsafe for use because they don't want to put their soldiers at risk. Also, there's been a lot of engine malfunctions within the past month. Southwest Airlines has had to emergency land two Boeing 747s, and one of them, the engine blew out, and a woman died because the windows cracked because the engine ring did not catch what it was supposed to catch. And the next one was about a week ago, and they also had a cracked window. So Boeing's looking into those and seeing what went wrong, and unfortunately it may have been Southwest Airlines' fault, it may have been Boeing's, but both companies are looking at publicity downfalls. Now, the external opportunities it's growing in demand around the world. Travel is growing. It's becoming more and more affordable to travel out of country. So the demand is growing. There's a strong backlog and order growth because of that demand growing. The rising demand for defense products is also growing. And the rising demand for space products as well. NASA and Boeing have a really strong relationship in their new coming Orion projects. Now, the threats, external threats, the competition from the other companies is gearing closer, like Airbus, and if defense and space government, if the government cuts funding, those contracts can be lost, which loses a lot of profitability and a lot of their market. So that's the SWOT analysis. So my internal recommendation is to increase safety within the company. They need to slow down production to ensure the quality of the products meets those safety standards, and actually bring attention to the failures. Determine why it's happening, fix it, and learn from your mistakes, because you don't want a failure and result in a fatality. You want to alliterate your mission and values, because clearly something's happening to these failures and safety standards that they need to alliterate their core values and to their employees. And then strive to get more contracts and keep innovating. So you always want to strive to grow and to be the best. So that would be my internal recommendation, along with my external recommendation, which you heard earlier. So in conclusion, technology is the way to the future, and I think Boeing's really unique and fun, and I think they're on their way to success, or at least to continue success. And thank you for the wonderful semester. I learned a lot with the strategic analysis, and I hope you have a great rest of the year. Thanks again.